Welcome to the Kenny Hack. Hello everybody, welcome to the Kenny Hack. As promised, getting out another review video for the Ortur Laser Master Pro. Going to kind of go over some of the first few projects I had time to get run off quick. Going to be doing, this was the very first test pattern I made with it. Kind of go over some of the details on that. We'll be going over my first stab at some images on a piece of basswood. Kind of some of the finished images, my test patterns I tried running beforehand to get my numbers kind of set up. And then this morning was able to get a kind of a test pattern, test tile made with a Norton white tile method. We'll kind of get a zoom in on all these photos. We'll talk about what I did, what I learned, and kind of problems I've heard that the Pro is having with some other users. A lot of just little bugs kind of with coming out with a new model, new firmware. Some things in Lightburn kind of are a bit glitchy. Hopefully all that just gets updated with firmware and software updates and kind of get some of the bugs worked out of it. But nothing deal breaking. It's just stuff I'd probably kind of expect with a new model coming out. So let's get into it. We'll start off kind of going over each little piece. The first thing I'd like to talk about in this review is how it was to put this thing together. Now, once again, the instructions that were included with this model weren't the best. They kind of skipped a lot of steps. And if you watched the last video and looked in the description below and down in the comments, I had included a link to an online PDF. And it's a much better set of instructions. I didn't use it. I was trying to go off the instructions that were supplied just to see how good or bad they were. And to be honest, if I hadn't put a couple of these together already, it would have probably been a bit confusing and a bit of a chore with the steps they kind of skipped over. So if this is going to be the first one you're putting of these together, use that online PDF. From what I glanced through looking at it, the guy that put that together was kind of putting a lot of time into it. He's from the forums and is very good at helping people and getting it put together. Even with the somewhat poor directions, I was still able to get this thing put together in probably under an hour. And it took probably about another 20-30 minutes kind of messing with the belts, trying to make sure they were square to the frame. It's kind of a little bit of a chore getting your teeth lined up exactly the same on both sides. So to make sure it's square, push that X-axis all the way to the very back. And both of the stopper rollers should hit the back rail at the same time. If one of them's a millimeter off, you got your teeth aren't lined up. So take the time to make sure you get that X-axis as square as you can to the frame. You need to also make a correction from the last video. Your focus barrel should be set to the bottom of the heat sink, not to the bottom of the lens, to get the proper focal distance. It's 50 millimeters. And as I said in my last video, I was maybe going to install upgraded belts. I actually installed the supplied belts just because I don't want anybody to think that you have to get upgraded materials to make these things functional. So I installed the supplied belts, so everything I have running right now is what was supplied to me. I haven't added any upgrades or mods to this piece yet. And the very first thing I do when I get one of these is try to run the belts in. So I create this double circle about the whole working area. It was about a 390 to 375 diameter, and I put it on an offset fill. I then set it to run at about 3,000 speed and only about 1% power. I'm not trying to burn anything. I just want this to kind of run for about 30 minutes and kind of working the full range of the belt. Because sometimes these belts can have a little bit of an edge on them. And as the rollers are going by, the belt teeth will kind of hang up on the rollers. And some of your first images, you might see a little repeated pattern of every millimeter where it kind of gets lighter or darker. And I think sometimes it's just them belt teeth haven't worn into the rollers yet. So it kind of takes a half hour to do, but it's a good way to check. Make sure all your belts are staying nice and tight and nothing sounds funny. Let it run for a half hour. And that seemed to work pretty well for these ones. None of my patterns so far that I've burned have had any signs of like the teeth on the belt hanging up on the rollers. Here was the first test panel I burned. This was just a piece of scrap pine I had laying around. Normally I just use this to prop up under the legs if I need to raise my laser up a little bit. So it had the unfortunate deal of just being the nearest thing around for me to burn. But what this was running from 3,000 at the very bottom, just 100% to 10%, and I stepped it up by 1,000 each run. So I had it going from 3,000 to the final swatch pass was supposed to be 10,000 millimeters per minute. Now I've been having problems with it running at 10,000. It keeps stopping at random spots. It's not on the turnaround. It's not the G-force sensor that's stopping it. It's just stopping in the middle of a line. And I'm still troubleshooting that. I think I might have found what was causing it, but it's going to take me some more testing that I haven't got done yet to see if I figured out what that problem is. I've talked to some other people, and they said they've also had some issues with it tripping out at the 10,000 max speed. But so far, 9,000 has run just fine. So it's right now, until I get the problem fixed, it's not really slowing me up. So the two bottom passes are 3,000. The 10,000 only got a couple lines in before it stopped. You can just barely see it at the top. The top full swatch is 9,000. And this was untreated wood. And at 9,000 speed, you can see it's burning a pretty good grayscale without any treatment or anything on pine. And on the slower speeds at 3,000, it was cutting in about a millimeter deep even at 3,000 speed. It's burning really deep, so I'm very impressed with the power of this head. It is substantially more powerful than the old 20 watt, and it's a much better focus. The next thing I tried was grabbing a piece of basswood, which is probably my favorite go-to wood for doing images. And I thought I'd better try the Kenny Hack solution out on it, the old aging stain, vinegaroon, whatever you want to call it. And figured I better give that my first go, otherwise I wouldn't be doing myself justice if I don't try the Kenny Hack right off the bat. Now, I don't remember exactly what I had set for power and speed. I'm sure I was about 85% power, and I can't remember if I was starting off probably right around 9,000 speed, I believe is what I was at on the bottom two test passes. And they weren't really burning, they were cutting. They were cutting down into the wood. This basswood is almost too soft for this laser now. It wants to cut it more than it wants to burn it. So I really had it like running all of them test patterns. Finally, by the time I got to the top, I was down to like 25% power. And this isn't a very strong solution of Kenny Hack. It's only like about 10 to 20% and only put on one coat of it. It's not very strong. So it didn't take very much. I'm going to have to kind of redo my solutions to kind of find what works best for this laser. And I'll be honest, I was having a really tough time getting good shading detail in the image. It just kind of wanted to print everything very dark. It was all very flat in color. I couldn't really get any good range of shading. It took me a lot of tinkering around, and I think I kind of come up with something that works. I'm still going to have to be working on it to really get it all dialed in and figured out what I'm doing, if it's working right or not. But here was like my first try at running an image. On the bottom, I started off using like Jarvis and one of the other dithers, and they were coming out really light, like on the very bottom of the bottom image. So then I switched back to my favorite newsprint and that was run at 25%, and it kind of darkened it back up and got me very good detail. And I believe this was at 318 DPI with newsprint. And then on the middle one, I jumped it up to 30% power, And it's tough to tell in this picture, but I actually think that middle one probably has the best. It kind of come out the darkest and with the best detail. The top one was 35%, and it kind of looks okay in this photo, but if you could really see it, it's probably just a little too dark. And all of these were run at 9,000 millimeters per minute. So very high speed, very low power needed to produce an image. But to be honest, if you're using the Kenny hack or the baking soda hack to pre-treat wood, running high speeds on wood is probably the easiest material to run at high speeds using these diode lasers. Didn't used to be, but after we kind of found that the Kenny hack and the baking soda hack and everybody's kind of worked on them, everybody's running high speed on wood. And all the other models usually have to use higher, like 70 to 80% power to get 9,000 millimeters per minute. This one's doing it around 25%. So you're going to really save the life of your head. You're not going to be pushing it very hard to burn wood. Hopefully that'll kind of keep the risk of fires down as well. Overall, my impression of this machine on wood is it's going to be very good. You're going to have plenty of power. We're going to have different methods we can try doing to get different results. So a lot more experimenting is needed to really get it dialed in, but so far I'm very impressed with it on wood. So here's the Norton white tile method. Just sprayed it with Rust-Oleum flat white, like I've shown in other videos. And I did a test tile, kind of burned some of the test patterns, burned some little sections of this image, trying different dithers. I tried newsprint, Jarvis, Stuckey, and I was getting decent enough results with them. And then for the heck of it, I just tried a grayscale section. And when I cleaned it with acetone, I was surprised how well the grayscale stuck and kept very good detail. I have tried grayscale on the Norton white tile method with my 15 watt, and I could kind of get it to work. I'd have to set the max power like at 85% and the minimum power to like 40%. You had to really boost up the bottom end of the laser to where it just barely start burning as soon as it started picking up a little bit of shading. I could kind of get it to work, but it took a lot of tricking around with the power percentages. This one here, I basically had it set at 85% max and 5% on the minimum, 5 to 7.5%. So just took it a little bit off the minimum and ran it on grayscale, and I stepped it up, like on the very bottom was 2,000 millimeters per minute. And you can see a lot of the details are very dark and flat, not much shading contrast. And everywhere there's a little line cutting across there, that's where I stepped up the speed. There's a couple of them I kind of hit the splice perfectly, and you can't really see where I changed speeds. But every time I stepped it up by 100 millimeters in speed, and by the time I was to the very top, I was up to 3,000 millimeters per minute. Now I'd say about the best detail is right around his mouth area, and that was right around 2,700 millimeters per minute. That's where I seemed to get good shading contrast. When I wiped it clean, most of the lighter details didn't really wipe off. Like when I got to like 2,900 and 3,000, when I wiped it off, a lot of the details came off the top of his head. It just wiped it off and it went back to the bare tile with the acetone. So I think for 85% power, 2,700 area is probably where I'd max it out just to get the best results. Now, one thing I did notice, it seems like with this laser, the white flat paint isn't burning quite as black as what it did with my 15 watt. It just seems to burn it a little different color. It's a little more of a gray than a black. Now, I don't know if that's just because of the speed, or if it's better focused, or just how it's burning. I might gonna have to try some different kinds of paint, see if I get a better result with a semi-gloss or a gloss. See if I can find one that burns to a better black scale than just a dark gray scale. But overall, using grayscale and being able to get this kind of results on the Norton white tile method, I know I couldn't come anywhere close to this with my 15 watt. I could maybe do it enough times and get it to work and get pretty close, but I'd be running probably about half the speed. Definitely couldn't get it up here at 2700 millimeters. That's, like I said, so far very impressed with the power of this head. It is substantially more powerful than the old 20 watt and better focus than the old 15 watt adjustable lasers I have. So once again, very impressed with the machine so far. So now we'll go over some of the glitches I've kind of found. First, this is how I grounded my system. Like, this new Pro model has grounding wires that kind of connect all the different portions to the frame. So everything's grounded to the frame. So now I just took my gator clips, grounded it over to my other machine's frame, which is then grounded up to my power strip on one of the cable jacks. Those are hooked all to the ground. And since I've hooked that ground up, I haven't had any static discharge issues. Now, when you're plugging in this unit, I thought I seen it in the directions that it was kind of common that it might spark when you plug in the power connector. To kind of help avoid that, plug in to this end of the power cord first and then plug it into the power strip. Like, I've seen some videos that people have posted in the forums. If it's already plugged into the power strip and you go to plug into that 2 amp hookup, it kind of grounds out to the frame and it kind of makes a spark. So just, you want to kind of avoid that so you don't end up shorting something out. It must be a defect they know about, but like I said, if you plug into there first and then to your power strip, it should avoid the problem. Something else I've been in contact with Ortur about is I'd really like to see a switch box added to this model, even if it's an additional purchase, and hopefully they can build something that kind of will go here right where the connector's at. But it'd be a switch box to either select to go to the normal y-axis or select to go over to a rotary. So you could leave your rotary and your y-axis both hooked up at all times, and you could just switch back and forth to whichever you're using. I think this would kind of help prevent a lot of people damaging their circuit boards and these pin connectors for the y-axis. These are very small pin connectors, and I think they get broke very easy or get loose enough to where they don't make good contact anymore. So if there was just a pass-through switch box right in this position, and both of them stayed hooked up at all times, I think it would eliminate a lot of problems down the road. So hopefully I can get them convinced to start working on something like that. Now, another good option they've added in is they got an emergency stop button up here on top. You can just push down and it kills everything. You have to turn it to unlock it and it pops back up. But also on the back side of this, it has an infrared sensor that's looking for any kind of fire. And if it detects anything, it'll automatically shut everything off. And they've got a lot of pre-set up stuff that it's looking for. Of any time the laser stops for anything for amount of time, it'll stop it. You know, hopefully prevent any of these fires from popping up that have happened to people. And it's usually because you get kind of content with it and you walk away for a while, and that's when always something bad happens. You know, you really want to try to stick around these things when they're running as much as possible. I also passed along to Ortur that with this ruler scale on the framework, that it might be a good idea to put inches on one side and millimeters on the other, so the user can kind of decide what scale system they want to use. Well, there's a lot more stuff I probably could go over, but this video is starting to get pretty long. So just going to say, this is a great machine. It's going for like $400 to $450 for this setup, and it's all worth that. It'd be nice if it came with the upgraded Z-axis. I don't know how much that's going to cost as an option. It'd be nice if they make that little switch box for the Y-axis, but it's not really necessary to get going. Is this a great machine to be your very first laser? I don't know. If you're ready to jump in, it's all worth $400. But if you're not sure if it's the hobby for you and you just want to try it, maybe start off with the cheaper laser. Start off with one of the $150 to $200 models. Just give it a try. See if it's something you enjoy and you're going to want to do. And if it is, maybe jump up, buy this Pro model, save that original lower budget one just as an emergency backup or just to do little side projects if you got two things going at once. But this is a very good diode for the setup. I'm very impressed with it, with what it can do at speed, with the power of the head. I've seen other people making videos and making projects of doing canvas and black and white tiles at high speeds. So with the power this thing has, the higher speeds are going to be achievable on a lot of different methods besides just wood. You know, you're going to be seeing canvas and black and white tiles pushing that 9 and 10,000 millimeters per minute speed, and that's what we're looking for, and it's already making it there. So you might see some more review videos from me. You might just be seeing some projects as they come out. I know everything's going to turn out really good for this model. It's looking really good so far. They just got to get some few little firmware and software glitches fixed, and I think it'll be a great machine to have into your lineup. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, found it educational, and I'll see you on the next video.